Hello and a very warm welcome to this second edition of the IDFA Filmmakers Meet and Greet, hosted by the Lutfia Rabbani Foundation in collaboration with IDFA. My name is Sarah Dawson. I'm a film programmer here at IDFA, and I'll be your host this evening. So I'll be guiding you through the next hour. I do very much hope that some of you were able to enjoy seeing some of the wonderful documentary films on the big screen over the past weeks in Amsterdam. It was an IDFA that almost didn't happen because of these new lockdown rules. So despite all the turbulence, we feel very lucky that it was a wonderfully successful event in the end. Tonight is an opportunity to engage in some very relevant discussions within the contemporary documentary filmmaking in the MENA region, and to interact with some very accomplished and exciting Arab filmmakers from the region, all of whom presented their exceptional films in this year's festival. Firstly, I'll give a brief overview of tonight's proceedings, and then I'll introduce the two organizations before handing you over to Salim Rabbani and Orwa Nirabia to say a few words on their behalf. We will then move on to the exciting business of meeting some of the wonderful participating filmmakers in this year's IDFA, where we will see some short video clips and dive a little deeper into each of their perspectives and work, after which there'll be a question and answer session in which you'll be invited to participate in the conversation before we finally round off for the evening. IDFA is one of the world's leading institutions dedicated to the art and industry of documentary film and new media. Through the IDFA Festival, IDFA Bertha Fund, IDFA Academy, IDFA Doc Lab, IDFA Forum, and Docs for Sale, IDFA supports countless filmmakers, film professionals, and new media artists around the world. The Lutfia Rabbani Foundation is a private, non-profit organization which seeks to promote Euro-Arab dialogue through education, dialogue, and cultural exchange. IDFA and the Lutfia Rabbani Foundation are proud partners, both of whom aim to encourage creating an inclusive film industry and foster mutual understanding between Europe and the Arab world through film. Both organizations believe that documentary film, through its ability to capture nuances and complexities, is an excellent medium to expose and hopefully debunk stereotypes and misconceptions. Through this, cross-cultural bridges can be built and more inclusive conversation can be initiated, which brings us precisely to why we're here today. So without any further ado, I introduce you to the chairman of the Lutfia Rabbani Foundation, Salim Rabbani.
Very much, Sarah. Good afternoon and or good evening, or where you may be. And on behalf of the Lutfia Rabbani Foundation, I'd very much like to welcome all the guests today to this virtual meet and greet. And we're so proud and thankful that we can do this for a fourth year, namely our partnership with IDFA. And we would like to thank Orwa and Sophia and Catalina and Sarah of IDFA for their close cooperation and for also something that has developed into a friendship between our organizations. And of course, also a very special welcome to the filmmakers who will be introduced to you individually by Sarah later. And also a special welcome to the former filmmakers that have been supported and promoted in our previous three-year partnership with IDFA, and who are here today also joining this event. So 4 years of partnering with IDFA. And why? And I think because our values and the activities are aligned in a number of areas, but in particular in one area, which is related to one of our objectives, which is cultural dialogue between the Arab world and Europe. And film, and in particular documentaries, is a great way to start this conversation. And therefore, we as the Lutfia Rabbani Foundation are very proud of our association with IDFA and with you, dear filmmakers today, and happy to be able to work together with IDFA and support this event and this initiative. And to all our guests and partners who are here today, welcome and thank you for your continuous interest and support and for joining us here today. And if I may, again, a particular thank you again to Orwa and his team, and if I may also to the team at the Lutfia Rabbani Foundation, which is being coordinated today by Marion Reinen and supported by Hazem Saqf al Hayat, by Manar, by Aisha, by Yasmin and Laura, and of course the fellow board members that are here today also, Yonette, Catherine, and Jan. And dear guests, thank you again for taking the time being with us. And we very much look forward and hope you enjoy this event.
Thank you very much, Salim. And now I hand over to the Artistic Director of IDFA, Orwa, to say a few words.
Thank you, Sarah, and hi, everyone. Thank you, Salim. Thank you, Lutfia Rabbani Foundation and the entire team, and a very warm welcome to all the filmmakers and everyone joining us online anywhere. I don't want to repeat what Salim just said, but I must say that it's very rare to find such partners, to have the chance to team up with a foundation that deeply and with all the kindness and humility of cultural dialogue try to build a bridge that is serious and respectful to both sides, to both shores. And so thank you very much for all of this. I think it is essential that we keep, that I, at least me, that's essential, that when I'm saying Arab, and I'm as Arab as can be, that I start from saying that when we say Arab, that is in no way in no way a national or nationalist approach. When we speak of an Arab region, this certainly means the great inhabitants of this region, all of them with their many languages and their different cultural and artistic expressions, their different traditions, and the amazing interaction between them and all the bloodbaths that they had among each other too, but also the many moments where they were oppressed together by colonizers. And there's so much here that is not a nationalist quest, but a true need to connect and to engage in dialogue. What I'm hoping for out of this is to, because IDFA is working hard, we're all working hard for years now on trying to be open to the world, on saying that when we say international film festival, we do not mean like when they say international community in politics, and they actually mean 15 countries. That when we say international film festival, we mean the whole planet and everybody who's living on it and expressing themselves through means of documentary cinema and art. And the place of the Arab region in this is essential, is not to be forgotten, because it's too near and too far at the same time from Europe. We see ourselves becoming Europeans the more the situation in our countries in the region get worse and worse, the more we move across the Mediterranean, some of us swimming, some of us jumping, others flying, some in different ways, but we end up with this question also inside Europe, asking ourselves, how are we, who are we, how can we have a dialogue, first internal dialogue with ourselves, and then also with everything around us, and still be who we are as individuals and as a collective, if that is what we feel like, but exist amicably and openly with many others. So this openness is the aim that we try to do. Part of this is trying to listen or to change things. One of the newest changes that we did, for example, in the way IDFA sees the world, the map, is that we finally took out the term Middle East from our lexicon. There's no Middle East anymore in IDFA's way of looking at regions. It's all based on just objective geography and the relationship between continents, rather than being seen from a particular point of reference that is external. These little acts do not change the world, but they at least, I hope, make us listen to each other better and make us think of each other as a full existence, and not only see the other in relation to us, but also in relation to themselves. It's wonderful to have all of these great filmmakers. I cannot talk about everyone here, but I mean, I'd love to. So I hope there's another opportunity that I do not take over the time of the others, but Abdullah, Jumana, Karim, Shero, Absamad, Idris, it's wonderful seeing your names here, and I hope you will have a nice talk now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Orwa. And we will move swiftly along to getting it up a little bit closer with the filmmakers. But before I do that, I will also introduce our wonderful interpreter for the evening, Idris Al Hassan. Sorry, yeah. Sorry, moving straight on to welcoming all of our wonderful directors. So we'll start with Shero Hinde. Shero was born in Kamshilo in 1980. He studied archaeology at Damascus University and then went on to work in the cinema field as a director, actor, and a scriptwriter, making documentaries about the history of Syria. Later on, he pursued a career as a director and cinema teacher, producing and directing documentaries and fiction in both short and feature length. Most of his documentaries are based on culture and the lyrical heritage of all the existing components of Mesopotamia. He is also one of the founders of the Komina Filma Rojava. We screened Stories of Destroyed Cities this year of Shero's, which was part of our top 10 selection by our guest of honor this year, Hito Steo. And then moving on, we will also be delighted to welcome Karim Qasim, who was born and raised in Beirut, Lebanon. Karim mainly works between the US and Lebanon on films, music videos, and commercials. Karim's artistic exploration first began in music, where he played techno for some years, and then moved on to photography, and then was awakened by a college professor who invited him on a trip to Indonesia. Since moving to New York in 2012, he has made 8 short films, completed his first feature, Only the Winds, which was selected for the 50th International Film Festival of Rotterdam and Vision du Réal in Switzerland in 2021. Most recently, he landed in Beirut only a day before and survived the massive explosion that destroyed much of the city. This last experience inspired his upcoming feature film Octopus, which was awarded the Doha Film Institute post-production grant, and most recently won the best film in IDFA's brand new Envision competition. So we're very proud of that and happy to have you with us today as well, Karim. So then moving on, we also have with us today Abdullah Al-Khatib, was born in 1989 in Yarmouk. He studied sociology at the University of Damascus. Before the revolution, he worked for the UN as a coordinator of activities and volunteers. He created the Humanitarian Aid Association, Watad, with several friends, which carried out dozens of projects in several regions of Syria, and in particular in Yarmouk. He participated in several documentary films relating to the life of the Yarmouk camp, notably being one of the cameramen of 194 Us Children of the Camp, which premiered at Vision du Réal in 2017. The German magazine Peace Screen identified him as one of the 2014 peacemakers. In Sweden, he received the Per Anger Human Rights Award in 2016, and Abdullah currently lives in Germany, where he was recently granted refugee status. We'll also be showing you a little bit from the film that he screened at IDFA this year in our Best of Fest section, which is called Little Palestine, Diary of a Siege. And then a little after that, we'll meet Jumana Mana. Jumana is a Palestinian artist working primarily with film and sculpture. Her work explores how power is articulated through relationships, often focusing on the body and materiality in relation to narratives of state building and histories of place. Jumana was raised in Jerusalem and lives in Berlin. We'll be showing you a little taster of her film Wild Relatives, which was screened as part of our focus program, The Future Tense, this year. And then finally, we are also delighted to be able to welcome Abdussamad Al-Montasir, whose research is centered on a trilogy, The Right to Forget, fictional and visceral narratives, and the trauma of anticipation. In his body of work and research, the artist sets reflexive processes that invite us to rethink history and cartographies through collective or fictional narratives and immaterial archives. His projects also question trauma and their impact on individuals, their behavior, and their socio-political evolution, and reveal processes where these traumas serve historicization. Abdussamad tackles these problematics while taking into consideration the knowledge on non-human identities, such as plants and visceral narratives, in order to ignite the emergence of renewed ways to think about our environments. And Abdussamad's film Gal Bashuf, which screened as a short that screened as part of our Best Fest section, we'll also see a little bit of that in a minute. So very, very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. I think we're very much looking forward to diving a little bit into each of your works. So I think we will begin having a little short look at Shero Hinde's film, Stories of Destroyed Cities.
مرحبا برات شاوي باشن صاحبي بميز القامشلو
ولا شو قامشلو
قامشلو شاو
ودي باجبو وكا حجاري دي ما قال لك سراج بواني
ويسر جاوا تخير دقيقة
هاتم ونلك هدرينا محلو دربو عدو الكجامن وبيريا بابي خو نقربو وناين بابي خو
بابا ما تخاص بيريا تقربو
Thank you so much for that, Shero. I have a couple of questions for you, which we'll go through fairly quickly because we're a little behind time. But I wanted to start by just asking you a little bit about the Rojava Film Commune. If you can tell us a little bit about the group, how it came together, and how you've worked together and continue to work together.
شيرو السؤال كامل ولا تحب ترجم لك؟
ترجمي تفضل.
هي بتسألك عن الجروب اللي انت عملت معاه الفيلم، كيف تعرفتوا على بعض وشغالين كيف تعملوا بالنسبة للفيلم.
اوكي. بالبداية شكرا لهي الفرصة اللي قدرنا فيها نلتقي ونحكي عن أفلامنا.
First of all, I'd like to thank you very much for this opportunity where we can speak about our films.
الكومين فيلم روجافا هي مؤسسة صغيرة، كنا مجموعة شباب وبنات بشمال سوريا. ببداية الحرب قدرنا نجمع آرائنا إنه نبني مؤسسة صغيرة للسينما بإمكاناتنا البسيطة. قمنا بالتعرف على بعض وإيجاد مجموعة عندها تجربة سينمائية، وقمنا بالبحث عن الشباب والبنات اللي عندهم الرغبة في الانضمام لهذه المؤسسة، وعن طريق تدريب لأشهر عديدة من قبل الناس بيفهموا السينما لدرجة ما قدرنا نسوي جروب اسمه كومين فيلم روجافا. وفيني كيف إذا بدك تترجم.
We were like a very small group of people. We gravitated towards each other, and we built like a very small foundation, and we tried to basically recruit everybody who is like with a background in cinema or like with an interest in cinema. And then we've tried to basically like build capacity by doing little workshops and trainings and yeah, basically I think that's it if I'm not missing anything.
هاي المؤسسة الصغيرة مكونة من ناس عندهم تجربة سينمائية وناس منضمين حديثا لهي المؤسسة. قمنا بتدريب مجموعة شباب وبنات لمدة سنة كاملة يعني مبدأ العمل بالأفلام.
So it's like, as I mentioned before, it's like a very small foundation. It's basically a mixture of people who have experience in cinema and those who don't. And then we started to, again, build capacity, and we trained some people for like a period of a year, a group of people.
وبعد هاي السنة هدول الشباب صاروا نسبيا بيعرفوا كيف يصوروا بالكاميرا، كيف يشتغلوا بالمونتاج، كيف ياخذوا الصوت، وبالنهاية مبادئ الأولية لكتابة سيناريو للفيلم. وكل واحد منهم عمل فيلم قصير بإشراف الناس اللي درسوهم. وهيك كل الطلاب والأساتذة هم مكون لكومين فيلم روجافا ومؤسسة روجافا.
So after 1 year training, they basically had the basics in filmmaking in terms of like editing, script writing, sound mixing, and like at the end of this year also they each made a small short film, and that was like something as a graduation project.
من 2015 لهلا قمنا بصناعة العديد من الأفلام الوثائقية والأفلام الروائية حتى والأفلام القصيرة. هاي الأفلام شاركت بالعديد من المهرجانات اللي قدرنا نوصلها لكم كبير من الجمهور.
From 2015 till now, we have produced fiction films, narrative, documentary, and we also produce short films. And those films, some of them like participated in some festivals worldwide.
بس الغاية المثلى لنا الأولية للكومين ما كانت هي صناعة الأفلام، هي كانت يعني زرع ثقافة مشاهدة الأفلام من جديد بشمال سوريا، لأنه هي كانت تعاني من فترة طويلة ما كان في صالونات السينما، كلها كانت مسكرة، وإضافة للحرب بعدين ألغت كل شيء تواصل مع الأفلام السينمائية. فنحن قمنا بإضافة برنامج أساسي للكومين هو عرض الأفلام. قمنا بعرض الأفلام بما يسمى السينما الجوالة بعديد من القرى والمدن اللي بشمال سوري، وقدرنا نحصل على جمهور، استهدفنا جمهور بعشرات الآلاف من الناس صاروا يشاهدوا الأفلام اللي كنا نترجمها أو نقوم بدبلجتها أو بصناعتها حتى.
So basically our main purpose was to reinstate the culture of watching films in northern Syria. And after like making films, we also invested in mobile cinema, and we managed to attract like tens of thousands of people in northern Syria as well.
Wow, that's really, really wonderful, and your film is really beautiful and a really I think fantastic combination of elements, and I wish the commune very well going forward, and many more wonderful works. So thank you for that. And then
عظيمة جدا وفيلمك أكثر من رائع، وأتمنى الكوميون نجاح زيادة.
Thank you.
شكرا.
And so we'll move quickly on now to Karim Qasim. and show you a brief clip of his award-winning film, Octopus. So thank you very much for that. And this is the second time I get to speak to you over video now, Karim. So thank you for being with us again today. The question I have for you is simply, maybe you can give us a little context and give us a little insight. You know, the film is about this explosion that happened last year in Beirut, but you don't really give us the drama of the explosion, but rather the moments thereafter. And so maybe you can tell us a little bit about your experience on the ground, being a filmmaker in that moment. Yeah.
Honored to be here. Thanks again. So in brief, I landed in Beirut a day before the explosion. I went to make another film, and I happened to be facing the port, and I got blown out of my room, and I survived. So that had a massive impact on me. So I was experiencing it head on. I spent some time with my family, but I had this gut feeling that I had to do something about it. I wasn't just gonna sit around and do nothing. So I tried to actually volunteer, help out a little bit in the beginning, and then I kind of abandoned that to go make the film. So the film, is silent, for those of you who don't know. And it was very difficult to make because it was entirely improvised. No one really planned for the explosion. So it was entirely instinctive and spontaneous. I had an idea of where it was going. I had, a plan of sorts, but, everything was changing. I tried to focus on everything but the noise. And noise is very attractive. It pumps us up. The civil unrest has been unfolding anyway in Lebanon since 2019 when the revolution began. So, it's been fairly documented. And I wanted to kind of go the other way, down I would say, a metaphysical path. And we ended up with Octopus.
And it's a very specific and distinctive film, and I think it was very much appreciated at IDFA this year. So I can ask you just maybe one more question, which is how are you finding life as an artist, being between these worlds at this time during a pandemic? Yeah.
I think it's difficult being anywhere, even more so being away from home. There's this dichotomy that instills lots of suffering, but I think through suffering we can find meaning, and through meaning we can avoid nihilism. We can have a purpose. We can create art from anywhere. And if we're not allowed to, if we're in solitary confinement, if it's that extreme, we can still introspect. As humans, we can self-reflect, and our imagination alone is an art piece, in and of itself, a masterpiece of sorts. So I kind of maybe shifted away from the question, but I think it is difficult for everybody to be living far away from home, or even at home where, you know, there are large obstacles from every angle, be it economical, political, or censorship.
Thank you so much for your insightful answer. So thank you, and thank you for being here as well. Now we'll quickly move on to Abdullah Al-Khatib, Little Palestine Diary of a Siege. So let's go ahead and see a little clip of that.
الحصار طويل كيوم أسير لا ينتهي في زنزانة. سكة حديد تمتد نحو الصحراء في يوم صيفي.
الشعب يريد خارج الطريق. صور كل خلف
ما زلنا نحتفل بأفراحنا.
المرة الثانية طلعنا نحن مجموعة من الهلال الأحمر ومجموعة من أساتذة الغسيل استلام الطرود من حاجز البويضة. هاي المرة الثانية بنفشل فيها.
ضغطة مرتفع. لا ما 16 على 10 ضغطة. أعطيها إياها.
لك يا جماعة دواء. Medicine, we need medicine. Where are you, Red Cross?
أهالي المخيم في محاولة تخفيف حصار الأسد على مخيم اليرموك.
موتونا بالصواريخ ما رح نموت جوع، رح نموت بكرامة. والوقت عم يطول والقمر ما بيكمل، والوقت عم يطول والقمر ما بيكمل، والساعة عم تمشي.
حين ترى المستقبل يمد لسانه نحوك ساخرا، افتح عيناك واصرخ: سأهزم هذا الحصار، سأهزم هذا الحصار.
So thank you very much for bringing your film to IDFA, Abdullah. Firstly, I want to ask you, obviously these were very difficult circumstances to be in during the siege of Yarmouk. I would like you to maybe tell us a little bit more about what made you feel like you needed to film this moment, and why it was important for you every day to be making a document of this moment in time. Yeah.
هلا بالحقيقة يعني أول شيء مساء الخير جميعا، شكرا لكم على الاستضافة. بالحقيقة في سببين.
Thank you very much for having me here.
أوكي. في يعني في شيء موضوعي، في شيء ذاتي. ليش كنت عم بحاول أصور داخل مخيم اليرموك؟ بدي أحكي أول شيء بالجزء الموضوعي اللي له علاقة إنه أنا كفلسطيني لاجئ عشت بمخيم، ربيت على مفهوم له علاقة بالحرب والحصار. ارتكبت عدد كبير من المجازر ضد الشعب الفلسطيني، ما كان دائما في كاميرا حاضرة لتوثق المجزرة، فبسياق مخيم يعني اللي صار باليرموك كان في عندي الفرصة إني أوثق. هذا السبب الأول للتصوير.
كمل عبد الله. So first of all, it's subjectively, I am Palestinian and I have been born outside of Palestine, and there was a lot of atrocities committed against the Palestinian people that were not documented, and I felt like I need to document from now on.
السبب الثاني بصراحة هي كانت يعني أحد أدوات النجاة اللي استخدمتها حتى على المستوى النفسي أتوازن مع اللي كان عم بيصير باليرموك، وطريقة لأكتشف وجهة نظر الناس حول الحصار وحول الحرب. يعني الكاميرا وفرت لي الكاميرا هاي المساحة إني أكون قريب من الناس أكثر، أسمع منهم أكثر، تحديدا الأطفال المسنين، أسمع وجهة نظرهم بالحرب، النساء كمان كيف عم بيفكروا بالحرب، كيف عم بيحاولوا يقاوموا بهذا الظرف الاستثنائي. فكانت الكاميرا أحد أدوات النجاة على المستوى الشخصي وأداة التعبير للآخرين.
I think I found a refuge in the camera, actually, personally, and it kind of like provided me with some balance psychologically, but also it was like a very important tool for me to connect and be close to people, especially elderly and children, navigate my way through that perspective.
بس حاولت قدر المستطاع بعملية التصوير أروح لمحلات ما بتروح لعرسة الصحفي عادة، يعني حاولت قدر المستطاع أطلع الجزء المخفي من الحصار اللي له علاقة بالشيء النفسي والاجتماعي اللي بيصير بالحرب بين الناس.
I tried also to, through my lens, go to places where usually it's not a place that a reporter would get to, and I tried to also navigate the social implications of being in such seat.
And I think the film has incredible moments of beauty in it as well, despite the circumstances. And thank you so much for showing us this humanity in a time of crisis as well. So thanks, Abdullah. And now we have an opportunity to hear a little from Jumana Mana, whose beautiful film Wild Relatives was screened as part of our focus program, The Future Tense. And we'll see a little bit of it now.
Work around the world as they should, then we shouldn't need to take seeds out. But of course, as we all know, because of the situation in Aleppo, that needed to be done.
السكارات طالعين من دخان عايش في خطر من هوله.
الشوفي ولا تخافي الأطيب مرت لك نافي مد الشوفي ولا تخافي الأطيب مرت لك نافي بجنة صوت التوهب عود المدبوس شفافي.
كيف الإنتاج؟ منيح إن شاء الله؟ يمكن العدس طلع الموسم الحمد لله. سمعنا طلع الموسم بسوريا والحمد لله، يعني الزراعة البعلية السنة الحمد لله بالمنطقة نجحت عنا.
Strikt vetenskapligt så vet vi ju att jordens tid är räknad. Solen kommer att expandera.
Så det är timeglass att ränna ut där faktiskt.
Ja.
Vetenskapligt.
يا ولد تربل رش على ضيوفك الطيوب دي كان بدك تزرع عشق بين القلوب الحب مثل الحب بقلوب البشر زرع القلوب تنطفي نار الحبوب.
So yeah, thank you for being with us, Jumana, and it's also the second time I'm speaking to you on video in the last week. So thanks for being here. What I would like to know, and I'm sure what everybody else would like to know, is that the film Wild Relatives is about seeds in a simple sense, but that seed has so much more meaning and history attached to it in the film and stands for a lot more than simply the object itself. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that and about the journey of these seeds and what they mean to you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Sarah, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all. So the film is about seeds and it's also about Syria, and it's about putting those two things in a global perspective. So I did not film in Syria, but I followed a seed transaction that moved from Aleppo to the global seed vault in Svalbard and then back to Lebanon, where they started a new seed bank due to the bombing of Aleppo and the inability of this agricultural research center to continue their work. And in a way, the seeds became a way for me to talk about many things, and that's the economy behind these seeds. And again, how the politics of Syria and the crisis there are entangled in a global politics and economy. And I found it powerful to talk through this tiny life form, which is the seed, and the metaphor that comes with it that I think a lot of artists and filmmakers have taken inspiration from, because the seed dies when it gets buried in the earth, only to be kind of reborn, to produce more of its kind, and then to die again. So it's about this cycle of birth and of death and rebirth that I was looking to follow through the movement of these seeds.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think one we can ask you very quickly, since we have a little bit more time, but you're also a sculptor, and can you maybe tell us a little bit about how your sculpting work connects to your filmmaking work?
Yeah, it's hard to answer these questions in only 1 minute, but they're two very different processes. Obviously, sculpture involves working with materials and sketching and working in space, and filmmaking is about working through time. And so they're entirely different processes, but I think in both I'm interested in similar thematics, and that is to do with bodies, the way that bodies are moving and their relationship to the spaces that they're in, and the architectures and power relations in general. So that's if I'm to answer it in 15 seconds.
I think that was very concise and yeah, very good short answer. So thank you so much. And yeah, so we'll move on to our last filmmaker on the list for tonight. And before I do that, I'll remind everybody that we'll have probably about 5 to 10 minutes at the end of this session for any questions that you'd like to direct at the filmmakers, any of them. So there's a Q&A box at the bottom. So just before we speak to Abdusamad, just keep that in mind, that you can prepare some questions. And so, yeah, moving right on to Abdusamad, whose wonderful film Gal Beshuf played in our Best of Fest section. It's a short film, a very beautiful short film from Western Sahara, and we'll see a little clip of it and then come back and chat to Abdusamad.
كيقولوا بلا في هاد الصحراء نهار واحد طويل، بلا هاد التراب كانوا فيه بزاف ديال الجبال، جبال كبار كيبدلوا شكلهم ديما، فيها الحجر كان كيتفتح بحال الورد، والناس اللي فيها كان عندهم نفس العمر. واحد النهار ليل طويل داز بحال الا هو نهار، بدل اللون ديال الجبال وخفى الناس وطرقان، كلشي ولا رماد.
Thank you also for being with us, Abdusamad. So the first thing I would like to know is, the film is very much about the desert, and it's about the space, the physical space of the Sahara. And I was quite interested in perhaps you telling us a little bit about how you feel this physical space has affected you and your filmmaking, and yeah, how has it affected your approach to filmmaking?
Merci beaucoup Sarah, merci à vous tous d'être parmi nous aujourd'hui. Je disais que par rapport à la question de Sarah, l'idée c'est que comment le Sahara affecte mon approche, c'est que je suis grandi dans ce territoire, et dans ce territoire où on perçoit la vie comme une créolisation de vie humain et non humain, et que dans ce territoire, on ne devient pas seul, on ne devient pas humain seul, mais on devient avec les autres, on devient avec le paysage aussi.
Okay, so this is an area that I grew up in. And the idea was to show that in the Sahara, you're not alone. It is an area where humanity and other people also come together. Is that correct, Abdessamad? You understand what I'm saying? Is that correct? What I'm trying to translate?
Yeah, that's correct. Ce qui m'intéresse dans ce processus aussi, c'est de voir comment le paysage et les plantes se rappellent de nos histoires et comment elles peuvent le raconter.
So what I wanted to show was how the fauna and the view essentially reflects our history and reflects our story.
Et comment ces identités non humaines peuvent raconter une histoire traumatique qui s'est passée dans ce territoire aussi.
And how you could also show human trauma and human stories in through the scene and through what is happening in the desert. Is that correct, Sabah?
Bien. Du coup, le Sahara a un impact sur moi par rapport à la manière avec laquelle je perçois mes projets. Et de l'autre côté, j'ai un impact sur ce désert de comment je communique ma propre trauma à ce paysage et à ce territoire.
Okay, so it has a direct impact on me, and it also has an impact on how I can, via the Sahara, tell my story about trauma and reflection thereof. That's not a complete correct translation.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I think I wanted to ask you one more question, but I think we're running out of time. But I do think that we have time for some questions from the audience. If anybody would like to ask a question, there is a Q&A box at the bottom, and you do feel free to enter a question in there, and then we will be able to pass it on to any of the filmmakers. The question from the audience member is for Jumana, and the question is, your documentary has a lot of scenes with comedic dialogue and people dancing or people talking about their favorite dishes. Do you feel that these scenes brought a human quality to the documentary, and why were these scenes important?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the whole film is about humans and plants. So it's not only in humor that we bring the humanity, but I think in all forms. But I think using humor is the only way that I know how to work. And it's the only way in which to deal with difficult topics, with dictatorship, with suffering. But I think it's also the most basic form and expression of survival. So I think that's a lot of what my film is about, is the survival. I mean, both of these seeds, of course, which are the kind of the central aspect of the film, but more importantly, perhaps, it is the displaced Syrians who are the ones laboring to reproduce these seeds, which travel across the world while they cannot. So I think it's about survival also in the most difficult conditions, in their case in refugee camps in Lebanon and in the fields where they work for very low wages, if at all.
Fantastic. And then we have another question here from another audience member, Jerome, who he says he's the director of 99, a non-profit project showcasing short documentary films. Is it possible to see your films? I guess this is for all of you. Is it possible to see your films online or in theaters?
I'll just answer quickly as I was still speaking. My film is screening on a platform called Shasha Movies right now. So that's one place to see it. And on another called True Story. So those are the two current streaming platforms that are currently showing the film. And yes, they do show in cinemas, but irregularly.
And now we have another one for Karim, which is a common way people describe Lebanese people is as incredibly resilient. Would you agree with this, considering the consecutive hardships that Lebanese people have endured?
Thanks for the question, whoever it was. I'd like to say that it doesn't apply to Lebanese only. I think everyone is going through their own hardships. So I think humans in general are resilient regardless of, wherever they are. We've seen catastrophes and human suffering for thousands and thousands of years, and you know, they have been resilient and they're still here. The only problem is our cultural paradigm, which is essentially a materialistic paradigm. And you know, what Octopus tries to do is kind of poke at a different kind of metaphysical narrative that we, you know, are not really looking at today. So if you want to talk about that more, I'm happy to answer.
In fact, we have a second question for you, which asks also from an anonymous audience member, how many of the scenes in the documentary were scripted, especially for the close-ups of people filmed in their homes? Were they told to act in a certain way, or was it their organic reactions to things happening around them?
It was a mixed bag of sorts. Some of it was fiction, some of it was, you know, documented on the spot. It's hard because, you know, everyone there witnessed it firsthand. So I think to a large degree, everyone was experiencing, you know, trauma. And my job was to kind of weave around the conversations, because when I knocked on their doors to go film them, they immediately started to talk and showed me where, you know, this thing exploded and that thing exploded. And then they sat down with me and they wanted to talk and talk. So I let that happen and unfold, but I decided to, you know, make a silent film. So I shot them after that. So to answer the question, it was largely a mixed thing. So yeah, scripted and non-scripted.
And we have another question for Jumana, and then we'll come to Abdullah. So we'll start with Jumana. The question is, does the seed bank in Norway give you hope for the future of agriculture in vulnerable regions where a lot of perennial seeds have died out?
Yes and no. My film was, I would say, more critical towards the Global Seed Vault. It's not a bank, but a vault, kind of a backup facility for these seed banks. Because it's not my criticism, but the criticism of many researchers on the topic, that this might be not the right way to be spending money for the protection of seeds, because the best way to protect seeds is to protect the small farmers who grow them, and to protect the seed banks who are already operating around the world, and there's many of them. So many have criticized the Global Seed Vault for, in a way, just reproducing hierarchies in which the North, and Norway specifically, comes to kind of save the world, and when they are the ones who have benefited most from the extraction of seeds from the Global South. So the Global Seed Vault for me is a problematic place, but it is also has its value and has its importance and is already built. The money has been spent and is in fact being used for saving these seeds. So no, I wouldn't say that it gives me hope. I don't take hope from institutions. I take hope from individuals and communities who struggle for survival and for their justice, but not from international institutions as the Global Seed Vault.
And now we have two questions for Abdullah, which I think we can ask as one question, which is, the first one is, have you shown your film to the community in Yarmouk, and what was their reaction? And the second question is, has the film had an effect on the developments in the Yarmouk camp? So maybe we can ask that as one. Yeah.
هلا يعني كلمة مجتمع اليرموك بحسسني انه عم نحكي عن شخص واحد. نحن عم نحكي على عدة اشخاص موجودين باماكن مختلفة، فبكل مكان كان في عرض للفيلم كنت اكتب على الفيسبوك انه اي واحد من اليرموك فيه يجي يحضر الفيلم، كنت امن لهم بطاقات. فكل اللي حضروا الفيلم بعتقد انه كانوا راضيين عن الفيلم. وهلا الاسبوع الجاي رح يكون في عرض لسكان المخيم بالشمال السوري اللي هن موجودين بمخيم اللاجئين، رح يكون في عرض كبير لإلن بالشمال السوري. فبشكل عام فينا اقول انه ردة فعل ايجابية عن كيف تم يعني تخريج الفيلم وكيف انبنى.
عبد الله كمان بعتقد هي ما عندها فكرة إنه المخيم غير موجود حاليا.
هذا الجزء الثاني من السؤال بخصوص انه تاثيره على المخيم. اول شيء هذا الحصار 2014 2013 2015 المخيم تم مسحه من الخريطه، ظلت معالم من المخيم وفيه عدد قليل جدا من السكان، يعني فيه 0.0 من 0.3 من سكان المخيم اليوم، فما اثر باي شكل ايجابي على سكان المخيم. واساسا لما عملت الفيلم ما كنت متوقع انه رح ياثر بشكل ايجابي على سكان المخيم.
So basically, the Yarmouk camp is like vanished. Basically, nobody is there. The 80% of the people who were there left, and the other 20 are like at the northern Syrian border at the moment. But the short answer is some of the people who are displaced, like in Europe, like have seen it. Whenever the film is showing, he would post on Facebook if anybody's around to come and see it. Basically there's like positive comments about the film, but he was not expecting that the film would change anything, and that was in 2016, and basically he did not manage to save the camp through the film.
And then I have another question here for all of you, but perhaps we can pose this to Shero, and you can translate this, Idris. The question, and I think this is interesting to ask of Shero because of the collective work that he does in northern Syria. The question is, did you make it a goal to distance yourselves from the subjects, or were you filming to be objective, or was being subjective more important for your role as a filmmaker?
شير السؤال لك بالنسبة لأنك يعني جزء من عمل جماعي، هل كنتوا تقصدوا تماما إنه تكونوا شوية تبعدوا نفسكم من العناصر تحت العمل، ولا ده كان هل كان قرار اتخذتوه بصفة عشان تكون موضوعي أكثر، ولا إيش كان الغرض من اتجاهه لو فعلا؟
لا، بطبيعة الحال احنا كنا جزء من المسألة، وكنا جزء من القصة ومن الفيلم، من الحقيقة تبع الوقائع تبع الفيلم، لأنه احنا عشنا بسنوات طويلة من الحرب، وكل الأشخاص اللي اشتغلوا بالفيلم وعم يشتغلوا بأفلام عديدة بالكومين هم جزء من هاي الأحداث اللي عم تصير. وبطبيعة الحال حتى الممثلين اللي كانوا بالفيلم هن بين قوسين يعتبروا ضحايا لهاي الحرب اللي نحن سوينا عنها فيلم.
So we were basically a community, filmmakers and even the actors in the film. So we were like a big community, and people who acted in the film were victims of these atrocities and wars. So it was like more of a collective communal work.
Very nice.
I think was that the end of the answer? We have one more question. We actually have two, but I think we only have time for one more question. So I'll just keep it with Shero, which is the question is from an anonymous audience member. Did filming in these locations put him and the others working on the film in danger?
بالنسبة للتصوير، هل كان بشكل خطر عليكم في أي واحد من المواقع؟
صحيح، بكوباني هو الفيلم صور بثلاث مدن مدمرة مثل ما بيشير اسم الفيلم. هي كوباني مدينة كردية، وفي الجزعة هي مدينة عربية، وفي شنغال مدينة إيزيدية. كانت عبارة عن مدن للمكونات. بكوباني ما كان في خطر لأنه كان داعش بعيد شوي، بس بجزعة وبشنغال كان قريب جدا، وكنا يعني بمكان كنا نوقف التصوير أحيانا عشان نكون بعيدين عن الخطر. في ممثل بتبين صورته بالفيلم وكان موجود معنا استشهد بتفجير لما كان بين تصوير الفيلم ومونتاجه يعني.
The film was shot in 3 cities. One was relatively safe, but the other 2 were actually dangerous because ISIS had activity very close to the cities, and the filming process had, like, we had to either shut it down or interrupt it several times. And unfortunately, one actor who participated in the film was the victim of a suicide bombing. Sarah, I think you're muted.
شكرا إدريس.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were finished speaking or not, and yeah. But anyway, thank you so much, Idris. But also thank you. I think that's about all that we have time for today. So I'd like to thank everybody who's here participating and listening, and I would like to thank the Rabbani Foundation for partnering with IDFA, and then of course I would very much like to thank all of you filmmakers for being here with us this evening. It's really a special occasion, I think, to be able to get such a wide survey and contact with what's going on in the region's filmmaking, and I hope that we are able to see some of you in Amsterdam next year, and not only through these digital means. So thank you, and have a lovely evening. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.